A couple of weeks ago, I published an editorial in our weekend newsletter that generated a lot of controversy and quite a bit of anger even. It was called "Joe Biden Should Call Chris Christie, Courting Young Voters and the Far Left May Be a Lost Cause." Now, I want to clarify my position and respond to some of the criticisms I received. But first, let me give you an overview of what I actually said and the point I was making in the article. Last month, Chris Christie revealed Biden has not reached out to him since Christie dropped out of the Republican primary. And I thought this was sort of surprising because Christie is the avatar of the anti-Trump Republican. His entire candidacy was predicated on attacking Trump.
The person I am talking about, who is obsessed with the mirror, who never admits a mistake, who never admits a fault, and who always finds someone else and something else to blame for whatever goes wrong, but finds every reason to take credit for anything that goes right, is Donald Trump.
He was the only Republican wannabe that was directly willing to just attack Trump head on. You had sycophants like Vivek Ramaswamy and Tim Scott and Ron DeSantis, who always went out of their way to defend and praise Trump, even when they were supposed to be running against him. But Christie consistently called them out and laid out a vision for a true post-Trump Republican Party and was crystal clear about the threat to democracy that Trump represented.
We've had these three acting as if the race is between the four of us. The fifth guy, who doesn't have the guts to show up and stand here, he's the one who, as you just put it, is way ahead in the polls. And yet I've got these three guys who are all seemingly to compete with, Voldemort, he who shall not be named. They don't want to talk about it. The fact is that when you go and you say the truth about somebody who is a dictator, a bully, who has taken shots at everybody, whether they've given him great service or not over time, who dares to disagree with him, then I understand why these three are timid to say anything about it. Maybe it's because they have future aspirations. Maybe those future aspirations are now, or maybe they're 4 years from now. But the fact of the matter is the truth needs to be told.
And it isn't just Chris Christie. Jonathan Martin wrote for Politico that, quote, "I reached out to every Republican lawmaker who has refused to commit to Trump in the general election. Senator Susan Collins, Mitt Romney, Todd Young, Bill Cassidy, and Lisa Murkowski all said the same. They've not heard from Biden." If this is true, this is a problem. Chris Christie and Nikki Haley represent a piece of the electorate that could be critically important for Joe Biden and for defeating Trump in 2024, which is disaffected anti-Trump Republicans. Joe Biden shouldn't count on young people and the far left to vote for him. I think most young voters who do vote ultimately will support Biden. But if what people are writing to me is true, that these voters are so furious, and according to Pew Research from April of 24, only 28% of voters 18 to 29 approve of Joe Biden's performance as president. 69% disapprove, 39% strongly disapprove. If that's all true, if you are all right about that, then Joe Biden should be figuring out how to grow the number of people who are going to vote for him. A recent CNN poll found that 81% of voters 18 to 34 disapprove of the way Joe Biden is handling the war between Israel and Hamas. This sentiment has been reflected in the high turnout of that uncommitted campaign, which does represent a protest vote against Biden's support for Israel. Even though the issue of Israel, Gaza, and foreign policy broadly ranks very low on the list of voting priorities, even for young voters, this is still something I wouldn't ignore. But when an election will likely come down to just a few 100,000 votes in a handful of swing states electorally, no issue or sign of potential trouble should be ignored. Also, in some polls, it doesn't rank quite as low. Like there's a recent Harvard Youth poll where it's listed as a priority among 37% of Democratic voters. As I've said before, when it comes down to few votes, any issue could make a difference. Now, speaking of swing states, the numbers don't look awesome for Biden, especially considering he's the incumbent. There's a New York Times Siena poll, which finds Trump is leading in Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. In Michigan, Biden's leading by only one. At this point, Biden is not going to fully appease the anti-war left without alienating people who already support him. So from a strategic perspective, Biden should operate under the assumption that he has lost some of that support. Now, I think in practice, he almost certainly has only lost a slice of it. But still, Biden should focus efforts on making up for that deficit, excite the centrist liberals, attract new support from anti-Trump Republicans. Now, here's where I got into some trouble with some people. I want to be super clear. This doesn't mean Joe Biden should become a conservative, nor that he is a right-winger. What this means is Biden understands coalitions and he understands the Electoral College, and he wants a plan to win and deny Trump 4 more years, which would be disastrous. We've already seen this attitude kind of take root among some of the Democratic Party's most prominent strategists and advisors. Hillary Clinton, who was named a key figure in Biden's 2024 campaign strategy, said undecided voters who are upset with Biden's handling of Gaza should, quote, get over yourself.
It's Biden versus Trump.
Yes,
we know that.
It is. It is.
What do you say to voters who are upset that those are the two choices?
Get over yourself. Those are the two choices.
Yeah, I love that.
Right?
And she recently dismissed the campus protesters as being people who, quote, don't know very much at all about the history of the Middle East.
I have had many conversations, as you have had, with a lot of young people over the last many months now. And you're right. They don't know very much at all about the history of the Middle East or, frankly, about history.
James Carville, who's a longtime Democratic consultant, was less ambiguous.
You don't feel like the election's important to me. They're not addressing the issues that I care about. Get off your motherfucking ass and go vote, because you should vote like your entire future and the entire future of this United States depends on it, because quite frankly, it does.
I don't think that these are necessarily the right tones, but the point here that they seem to be making is they recognize some of that electorate may be lost. The majority of Bernie supporters did vote Biden in 2020, but those who didn't vote Biden in 2020 likely fall under this umbrella of the uncommitted voter. And then you've got your moderate Republicans who also have an uncommitted vote of their own, which is Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley dropped out of the primary in March, and yet a significant portion of Republicans are still showing up to vote for her in Pennsylvania. Haley won almost 17% of the vote. In Indiana, Haley won almost 22% of the vote. In Maryland, she got about 20% of the vote. Nebraska, 18%. West Virginia, 9%. Trump still overwhelmingly dominates, and there's no question that Trump is the de facto leader of the Republican Party and will almost certainly be the nominee. But the fact that such a large chunk of the Republican electorate would even bother to go out and vote for Nikki Haley when her campaign was inactive for months still shows that there is a moderate Republican electorate that wants an alternative to Trump. The obvious alternative electorally should be Joe Biden. We did a poll, David Pakman Show poll, not scientific, informal, which showed that Biden is more likely to win over anti-Trump Republicans than he is to win over the anti-Israeli Gaza war Democrats. But Joe Biden is less likely to be that alternative as long as he is campaigning with people like Bernie and AOC, who are seen as radical socialists by Republicans. Wrongly, by the way, wrongly seen that way. So again, to be crystal clear, my argument is not that Biden is actually more politically aligned with Chris Christie and Mitt Romney than he is with Bernie and AOC. Biden is clearly more aligned politically with Bernie and AOC. But the idea here is Biden probably has almost all he's going to get in terms of votes from the AOC-Bernie alliances, whereas there are votes to be gained, especially in swing states, from getting some of these anti-Trump Republican endorsements. On policy, Biden's presidency has been the most progressive in decades. Understanding election math doesn't change that reality. Biden needs to make anti-Trump Nikki Haley voters and supporters of Republicans like Chris Christie and Mitt Romney comfortable enough to vote for him. And a great way to do it would be getting people like Christie and Romney to vote for Biden and to publicly say they are voting for Biden. Now, in addition to Christie and Haley, Joe Biden should also reach out to other moderate Republicans, Paul Ryan, Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, Arnold Schwarzenegger maybe, and see, is there anything he can do to win their public endorsement? If any of these Republicans are willing to attend a rally with Biden, it may help with that swing state moderate vote even more. Now, we know that voters who have reservations about voting for Trump and who are concerned with protecting American democracy are gettable. And we've seen that because we've interviewed some of them. There are many voters like Kyle and Nathan, who I spoke to, who recognize Trump is an existential threat to democracy. Running as a safeguard against fascism may not be enough for Biden to comfortably win a second term, although in a sane world it should be. And therefore, Biden should pick up the phone and provide, is it a safe space of sorts for Republicans like Chris Christie, Nikki Haley, and others and their followers to be able to say, hey, you know what? I am ready to put country over party, and I am ready to deny Donald Trump this presidency. And then if and when Biden wins, we go back to policy disagreements, and those Republicans, work on getting a more sane nominee for 2028. This makes sense to do. It doesn't jeopardize Biden's credentials as having one of the most progressive presidential terms, certainly in 100 years. I think Biden should do it. Let me know what you think in the comments.